it's Callie, and I'm in my temporary filming spot for the quarantine. I've got like all these blankets on the ground, lots of cozy blankets, and I'm sitting on top of some pillows right now. And I sort of just wanted to first make sure that all of you guys are doing good and that you're safe and at home. I hope you're at home. Just because these are really crazy times. I know that I myself am a little bit bored and like struggling to fully understand like what's going on, but we are all in this together. So I guess today I just wanted to create content to alleviate some of that boredom for me especially, but hopefully for you as well. And I sort of wanted to talk a little bit about some of my experiences, and in this video specifically, I will be talking about what it's like to get married young, and I'm sort of just going to like talk through my experiences and sort of not like give tips to you, but sort of talk through my experience and like what made my experience really good, you know, some pitfalls that I had here and there, but in general how we made our wedding happen, and it's going to be almost a year, I want to say, there's a few months till it's about a year. I think we are about like 9 months married at this point. So in 3 more months, we will be celebrating our 1-year anniversary. So I thought now would be sort of like a perfect time to evaluate everything that happened and assess it. So I asked Instagram what questions they had for me on this topic, and I have some of those questions that you guys had written down. And yeah, I'm really excited to talk through this with you. And I'm not saying that, you know, you should get married early or if you should even get married at all. But these are just my experiences and what I liked and disliked about the experience, although I didn't really dislike anything. So I feel like this video is going to be very positive and uplifting in that way. So the first question people had for me on Instagram was to give a little bit of background on backstory and timelines. So in terms of the backstory, I started dating Chris when we were both so I was 18 and he was 19, and we were dating for so I got engaged when I was 22. So we were dating for about 4 years, 3.5 years at that point. And then we got married also when I was 22 and he was 23. So that is pretty young. 22 is pretty young to get married, just considering that most people that I know personally get married in their late 20s. So probably about 26 to 28 would sort of be that like, middle range that I see a lot of other people getting married at. Hi, Daisy. That was rude. So that's kind of like that's kind of our basic timeline and how we went about things. And we got engaged in October of 2018, and then we got married in July of 2019. So between our engagement and our wedding, there was about 9 months between that time. So if you see Daisy running around, I can't really do anything about that. Daisy, come here. She comes so fast when I call her. Oh my God. And then we got a dog, like literally the day after we came back from our honeymoon. So that's kind of what the timeline looked like. The next question that I was asked was, did I know he would propose? And the answer to that is yes and no. I knew that he was going to do it soon. I didn't know exactly when, but I had like a pretty good idea of like the general timeline for that. And I was definitely surprised when he actually did propose. So it definitely was a surprise, even though we had talked about it before. One thing that I do recommend if you are planning to get married early is to definitely, what was that? Was to definitely talk about it a little bit before you do so, because it is a really big step to be taking in a relationship, especially if you're really young. So talking through it is probably one of the most important things that you can do, and talking about timeline and like your expectations and what you sort of want out of the marriage is extremely important, especially when you're young. And the next question was it scary? So some aspects of it were definitely not scary because we had been together for quite some time at that point. So we knew we definitely wanted to be together. The scary things were more like external factors, like, oh, like I wonder what like this person will think, or like I I mean, obviously, like, we didn't care about that in the long run, but like short term, like, those were some of the concerns that we had. One thing that I was a little bit concerned about was like actually planning the wedding. So at that time, and now and still now actually, I was working full time. So I was working 9 to 5, and I was doing grad school, and I'm still doing grad school. I'm not done yet. So working full time and doing grad school and planning a wedding and, planning getting a dog and planning the honeymoon was just a lot to deal with all at once. So it definitely was a lot of extra work. But luckily I did have my parents to help me with a lot of the planning, and they did take a sort of leadership role in the planning. So I was very grateful for that. So that was one of the biggest concerns that I had, was that I was doing all of these other things, and then I also have to, plan this wedding, which was, definitely, Daisy, no, definitely difficult and somewhat of a concern. All right, Daisy, this is my video, go away. All right, she might just be here for now. So the next question I had was, I guess planning and other complications was a question that was asked, and that the main concern that I had was, we lived in Pittsburgh. We do live in Pittsburgh. Currently, we haven't moved to North Carolina yet. But we lived in Pittsburgh, and our wedding was in California. So a lot of the planning that I had to do was remote. But luckily, I did have my parents in California to sort of like go check out different vendors and venues and all that kind of stuff for me. I did fly out to California once to look at venues, and Chris didn't even come with me. We did it mostly over like pictures and FaceTime, but that was one of the complications that we did have. But other than that, everything went really smoothly. There was nothing unexpected. Everything went perfect on the actual day of the wedding, so there's no complaints there. But that was a little bit of a risk that we took, was planning the wedding remotely. But again, I was really lucky to have my parents there to sort of help me with that process. And my parents were more than willing to help me plan. They were super excited about it. They wanted to be extremely involved, so they were. And that's kind of why it was a little bit easier for me and Chris, just because we did have those people that were, more than willing to help us out. And the other thing that I was asked was, how did I budget for the honeymoon and the wedding? I don't want to give exact financial information about that kind of stuff, but for the honeymoon, the way we sort of split up the planning was that I was planning the entire wedding, and then Chris was planning the entire honeymoon. And with the wedding, I was actually very lucky to have my parents be so involved, so the financial burden wasn't that high for me. For the honeymoon, we had a budget. We went over budget, but we had like an initial budget, but we did definitely spend a lot of money on the honeymoon because it is a once-in-a-lifetime sort of adventure, I guess. So we ended up going to Hawaii for 1 week and then Japan for 2 weeks. So it was a very long honeymoon, but it was really fun, and I don't regret like anything that we did. I'm glad we spent a lot of money to go on that honeymoon because we did want to like invest in that experience, and we didn't necessarily care too much about the money, just because it was our honeymoon. And I think you should splurge a little bit on your honeymoon and not worry too much, because at the end of the day, you want to have the experience like right after your wedding, and you want that alone time. So it's a really good idea to save a little bit for that and, invest in it when the time does come. So the other question I had was, were my parents supportive? My parents were extremely supportive, and they were very, very involved with the planning of the wedding, which I'm very grateful for. At the time of my wedding, or I guess at the time of wedding planning, I did get irritated occasionally because I was like, oh, like my parents are deciding everything and doing everything, and I feel left out of my own wedding. But looking back at it, they were definitely very involved in all of the planning, but they were also definitely involved in taking that stress of the planning as well. So I had a very smooth experience because I did let other people get involved, and I did sort of let go of some of the decisions that I would have thought that would have been important to me. Like, oh, do I really want, this dress or this flower? Like, so I did have to let some of those decisions go for that, lack of stress a little bit. And the day did go perfectly, so I wasn't upset in any way after the wedding, and I'm very glad that my parents were involved. Another question that was asked was, how did I plan the bridal party and events? So for the bridal shower, my mom actually planned that. And that is a very religious event. So my bridesmaids weren't necessarily that involved in planning the bridal shower because it's really only supposed to be like a religious event, I guess. So I didn't have like what Americans would consider like a bridal shower. It was like an Indian Hindu bridal shower. For my bachelorette party, we went to Niagara Falls and we went for 2 days and it was so much fun. I had, 2.5 days kind of. And we had so much fun and I still think about that trip and it's just going to be like a trip of a lifetime. Like it was honestly just like the best time ever and I was so happy. Like it was just like the best trip ever. So definitely have a bachelorette party if you have bridesmaids and they can make it. And even if you don't have bridesmaids, definitely still go on a trip with your friends before your wedding and make it wild because you won't, like, there's like no way you'll regret it. It was so much fun. And other events that I had, we did have an engagement party with family at my parents' house. And then after the wedding, we did have a second reception in Maryland with Chris's family for the ones that couldn't fly all the way out to California. So that was definitely something that sort of like added to the festivities and I was very grateful for. Other than that, I didn't really have any other events. I had a small engagement party in Pittsburgh with a few of my friends, but that wasn't really a big thing. We just got like a cake and, officially, I guess, in person announced our engagement to those people that were there. So that was really fun as well. I think that's like kind of all we did. We did have a photo shoot right after our engagement, which I definitely recommend you doing because then you could use those photos on your wedding website or your invites or whatever. We didn't really use them on our invites because we wanted a minimalistic design, but we did use them on our website. And we just have those pictures forever. So we're very grateful that we did that photo shoot. So that's the other, I guess, event that we had. So the last question is about the groomsmen and their events. So for Chris, he didn't have a bachelor party necessarily. He did have a bachelor party, but he didn't travel for it. He had one in Pittsburgh with some of his friends, and I believe they played video games, and it was local, so that was really fun for him. Other than that, he didn't really have too much else, but I know that they had a really good time at their bachelor party, so that's pretty much it for that, I believe. I think I definitely went way more intense with my bridesmaids and my bachelorette party and bridal shower. So I'm very glad that all of this happened and that all of these events happened. But yeah, that's kind of my experience. And I guess if I did have some advice, it would be to enjoy the process of wedding planning. One thing that I kind of a little bit wish I did, although, with this whole coronavirus thing, I'm glad we didn't, wait so long before we got married. But I wish that we had waited a little bit longer to be engaged because we were only engaged for 9 months. And for some people that might seem really long, but for me, that feels a little bit short. Like, I wish we were engaged just a tiny bit longer. But now that I kind of think about it, like with this coronavirus thing, I'm kind of glad that we got married when we did. We got married July 2019, so that was about, a whole 7 months before this whole coronavirus thing started. So it was late 2019. Well, it was actually more like August that we went on our honeymoon, so none of our travel plans were affected or anything. So it was a good 5 months before this whole coronavirus thing happened. So I'm very glad that we sort of went on our honeymoon and got married when we did. And I'm very happy about everything in general. But I kind of, if I did get to choose a little bit, I would definitely recommend that you be engaged for a little bit longer just to, enjoy being engaged, because that is like a huge step after being boyfriend and girlfriend, and then getting married is like another huge step. So enjoy being engaged, because you're only engaged for such a short amount of time, and that's probably going to be the shortest amount of time in any relationship is being engaged. So enjoy that time as much as you can and have as many events as you can if you enjoy that kind of stuff. And really, this period of time is all about you. So make it about yourself. Like, there's nothing wrong with, if you're engaged for 9 months, like these 9 months are really about you. So really prioritize yourself in this time, because there's no other better time to do that. And I think with the whole thing about being young and getting married, don't worry too much about like what other people think about it. I was 22, so I wasn't 18 or like, even 17, or I don't even know when the legal age is to get married, but I was 22, so I was graduated. I'd graduated college, but I was still doing, I'm still doing my master's, so that was like one thing that sort of factored in, is you might have other things going on. Like if you're still in school, it'll definitely be harder to, plan events and like fly out to venues and like visit venues, but definitely know that if you are committed to getting married, it is a very good idea to do so. But one piece of advice that I do have for younger people is that you should probably date for a little bit longer before you decide to make that sort of decision. Like definitely date for, I don't want to give like any exact numbers, obviously, because it's different for everybody, but definitely date for like a significant amount of time so you both can learn and grow together and understand what you sort of want out of a relationship and what you want out of life, because when you're really young, sometimes you don't know that kind of stuff. So we did wait until we were both graduated and settled in our jobs and were, financially secure before we did make those sorts of decisions. So keep in mind that if you do get married even younger than I did, you will still be learning and growing a lot. Like between the ages of like 20 to 25, you are figuring so many things out about, who you are, your career, even just like where you want to live. Like if you live in a different place than, like say you, get engaged when you're like 19 or 20, and then you graduate college, and then your husband or, your fiance moves to like a different city or gets like a really good job opportunity in a different city, I would recommend having those things like location and that sort of like financial stability figured out definitely before you get engaged. So those are kind of the things that are up in the air when you're, younger. Obviously, I don't want to say, you definitely don't, but just know that it is a little bit harder to figure out those sorts of things when you're younger. So that is definitely one drawback to getting married young. But again, like I was 22 and he was 23, so we were still young and we are still, figuring things out and learning and growing together. So if you are willing to grow together and make, big decisions in your life together, there's no reason why you can't get married young and figure things out as you go. So that's like the only advice that I have. So yeah, I hope this video was fun and I hope it was helpful, and I hope all of you are well during this whole crazy coronavirus time. But yeah, that's it for this video, and thank you so much for watching and listening to my mini rant, I guess. But yeah.